So it's 8 years since we started regularly. Yes, on a Sunday morning. Now, obviously, there was the hiatus with that nobody talks about anymore. COVID. And as we've done over the past few years, we try and take some time in this birthday service just to think back over some of the things that we did over the last year and think about what we're going to do in the year coming. I don't know if any of you follow us on social media. No? One or two? No. Well, thank you very much to those of you who do. If you do, then you might have noticed that we're undergoing a bit of a rebrand. So there's I don't know if it's on the screen. Yes, so there we go. And there's another one as well. Yes. So with any good brand, there's a bit of a story behind it. So if you just flick back to the previous one. So last year, a friend of Rosie's came through. Rosie, where are you? Oh, yes. Sorry, you're hiding in the corner. A friend of Rosie's came through called Tim, and he had a prophetic word for us. So that's where God, gives a kind of a clear impression of what he's trying to say to us. And the thing that he talked about was strengthening our nets. And so, and that's a reference to a story where Jesus is with some fishermen. They're on Lake Galilee. And they have this miraculous catch of fish, loads more fish come in. And they catch all these fish without the nets breaking. So we've done quite a lot of work over the last year to kind of try and do that, to try and strengthen our nets. So in some ways, things look quite similar to how they did before. We had a net before, and now we still have a net. But in some ways, it's been quite a bit stronger. And one of the things we did as a response to that was to have 10 days of prayer and fasting. And as we prayed, over that time, there sort of came through this theme about God's love. Now, obviously, God is love, and that's a thing that we think about all the time. But the fact that of God's love and wanting to be able to give it away came through as and it sort of resonated with us. So that is the sort of strap line, to know God's love and to give it away. So that's what we want to be about, and that's something we felt God really sort of highlight to us during those 10 days of praying. Something we've always said ever since we came to Derby is that we wanted to be people who were marked by 4 things: gentleness, humility, brokenness, and compassion. And that's part of the idea with the sort of brokenness in the D and the V, you see. It's a bit clearer on the other logo with the colours. And also the font. It's a bit tenuous, but it kind of makes me think of trains. I don't know if anybody else can see that. Yes? No? Thanks, Wes. Everybody else apart from Wes can see it. But, Derby, trains, our history, the kind of engineering history that we have as Derby. So that's sort of reflected in there. So we've done loads of things, and I'm just going to kind of run through them quite quickly of some of the things that we've done over the last year to try and strengthen our nets. So we ran a leader training course, and we all got together on a Monday night, a bunch of people, and talked about some of the things that were really key to us. Not all of those people became leaders. Some of them did, but just to kind of put in the mix really clearly about what we're about. We also had some other prophetic words from another gang outside of the church, and they talked a lot about simplifying things. And so, as you perhaps wouldn't imagine, but to run anything like this, there's a whole kind of legal thing that has to go behind it to make sure that we're all compliant and all that kind of thing. And so what we've done is as part of the strengthening our nets, we've changed from an older form of charity to a newer form, which is a bit more robust, and it's called the CIO. And, anyway, people are nodding off now. But all that to say, we have closed down the old charity, because at one point there were 3 or 4 charities going all in parallel. So we've closed down one of them, and now there's just one associated with the building and one associated with the church. So we've done that. We've got a new chair of trustees. And then we've got a proper social media presence now. We're even on TikTok, apparently. So... yes, very impressive, huh? So, yeah, and you might think, well, social media, that's for the young uns. But actually, these days it's the foyer. It used to be when you were looking for a church, you'd look in at the outside, or you'd look in through the foyer and see what the people were like on the inside. Well, you can do that on the internet now, so it's a foyer. So it's important. It's an important thing to work on. Or not to mention the work that we've done on this building to try and make it a bit more viable as a Sunday morning venue. And I have an office through there now, which it might not mean anything to you, but, to be able to go to a place where it's quiet and nobody's playing the piano and the dog isn't barking and, that kind of thing, and have a computer set up and you just take off your coat, press the button, off you go. It's great. Yes, so we at this time last year we were still running the Warm Hub here. So we ran, I think, on a Friday mornings where people were just welcome to come, and it was nice and warm. It's a bit too warm this morning, isn't it? There's it's a bit hard to get it right. Better too warm than too cold, though, eh? So a nice warm place, simple lunch and just a chance for people to hang out. And we were doing that last year, so that is something we can celebrate. And we didn't get a chance to run that this year because a couple of people were pretty sick. So we didn't have the team, but we broke the ground. We've done that. That's in our history now, and it's not like the next time we do it, it'll be the first time. We've got all that. I was going to say learnings, but that's to business expertise. Thank you. Yes. And even though we couldn't do that, we had an offering for Derby City Mission, who look after the homeless, and we gave them over £600, which covered an evening for at least 11 people. I think they have more, but at least 11 people. So, we're still, even though we can't do it ourselves, we're still helping others to take care of the poor. And then we've done other things. We started a new small group, and which has been a lot of fun, actually. A little plug, it's on a Tuesday night. You're very welcome to come here. We eat together, 6:30. Anyway, it's my group, so that's why I'm... Yeah, and the other small group leaders are like... So, anyway... Does that mean they've got to cook for us from now on, because we're eating? So does that mean we have to go and have our tea? Well, what we do is we share it out between us. So different people from the group cook. So if you're volunteering to cook for your group, Heather, you're very welcome. Of course. So a new small group. We had a great carol service. That was really good fun. We've had a weekly prayer meeting that we've religiously, you're not supposed to say that, are you? We religiously done on a Thursday morning. And all that sort of thing helps, making the things stronger and strengthening the nets. A particular highlight this year was DTI, and so Dreaming the Impossible. I think there's a photo of some of the gang, a couple of photos. So there you see. And we took more people this time than we have done previously, and it's quite a big deal to cater for. I can't remember. I think there was more than 20 anyway, so we had a marquee and the whole thing, it was quite a big deal. And huge thanks to the leaders who slept over. I'm afraid I didn't manage to sleep over at all. So, but a big deal. And it was great to see some of the kids really moving forward in their faith. So, the one on the right is they have some kind of paint thing. Is that what it's called? I can't remember. A colour run, thank you. And just great fun. Loads of great fun. And, all sorts of things that I would not want to do that. But, when you're a teenager, great fun. Okay. So this year for Jane and I has not been the easiest year. We've had a few rough years. But during this year, Jane was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. And so she just couldn't carry on working. So as part of that, I was working 3 days for the church and 2 days as an engineer. And so I said to work, could I take a sabbatical, an unpaid sabbatical? And it turned out they would let me have a year. So I've done that. I've had a year off, and I've been effectively doing Jane's job and trying to, as you can see, trying to put in some of these building blocks. So that year is kind of coming to an end. And as we've thought about it and prayed about it and talked to lots of different people and had, wise input, we just felt like, actually, it isn't sensible for me to go back to engineering. And so I've, handed in my notice. And my boss said, "Oh, you've been terminated." So I'm not quite sure how to take that. But anyway, yeah. So that's what we've done. So we're going to I'll be full-time for the church. And obviously Jane is still recovering. So for me, it's quite an exciting time, a little bit daunting, but I have been working towards this for a long time. And to finally give up my tent-making job is quite a thing. And I was a highways engineer, and you just can't get away from it. It's like I'm always driving places and thinking about, well, that's the wrong crash barrier, and they use the wrong road. Anyway. So it's sort of a weird thing to give that up and all that knowledge, but there you go. So that kind of brings me nicely to the future and talking about this year coming. So there's a story in the book of Matthew. Matthew is one of the books in the Bible where some of the stories of things that happened to Jesus are written down. And I think it's an interesting story, and there's some things in here that will perhaps explain what we're going to do over the next year or so. So I'll read it. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told them, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." So here we have this wonderful story, and when Jesus meets Matthew, and he's a tax collector. Now, I was thinking about this as I was preparing. I have never met anybody who worked for the HMRC. And I have met thousands and thousands of people in my life. Has anybody ever met, you've met one where did you not pay your taxes? There you go, value job. So I'm thinking that perhaps it's not something that you admit to. In fact, I used to work as a civil engineer, and apparently if you're a spy and somebody asks you what you do at a party, you say, "I'm a civil engineer," because everybody thinks, "Oh, that's boring," and doesn't ask you any more questions about it. So I wonder if that's what's going on with the people who work for the HMRC. But anyway, so this poor fella, well, I don't know if he was poor, but Matthew, he wouldn't have been liked. He was basically representing the occupying nation, the Romans. And not only was he representing them, he was taking money off people, and nobody likes to part with money. I like my money in my pocket, thank you very much. I don't like to part with it. And so he was getting people to part with his money. And not only that, he would be probably, and the Romans, knowing them a lot, would be encouraging this, he would be skimming off the top. He'd be collecting more than he actually needed to. So he was not a fella who was liked. And yet, Jesus, as this travelling preacher, he says, "Come and follow me." And then he goes to his house, and Matthew throws a party. And you can see that there's all sorts of different people there. So if you just imagine that party for a moment, you've got people from all kinds of different walks of life. You've got people who are wealthy, people who are poor. Jesus himself was poor. He had nothing to his name. So you've got all these different people from all different walks of life. And you've got the Pharisees there. So basically the people in charge, and I don't know if our mayor, when she goes to it is a she, isn't it? No, it's a he. I thought we had it's all very confusing. Oh, right, okay. I imagine when they go to a party, they wear the chain of office, thank you. So you'd imagine the Pharisees doing the same sort of thing, they're wearing their robes that show their office, their importance. And so here's this guy, Jesus, and he's going around preaching, and he's got a following. People are coming to hear what he wants to say. And, he goes to a party, people want to be at that party. And Jesus is going around doing the thing that he set out to do. He's working on his mission. He's announcing the kingdom of God. And the story where God is saying, God is coming back and taking back the thing that we were supposed to be looking after. And Jesus is forming this new community around himself. And you can see that the Pharisees are not happy with this. They're like, who is this guy? How he's using our book to form this following. And all these people, these sinners, are coming. And you can tell that they're offended. And Jesus is, gathering the wrong kind of people. And it's quite a challenging story. It was challenging for the Pharisees, but it's also challenging for us. And this story sort of describes the kind of community that Jesus wants. And presumably, if he wanted that community then, he still wants it now. So I'm just going to talk for a minute about a fellow called Richard Hybert. Could you help me here? You don't know? Okay, all right. Anyway, Richard. I'll stick with... Oh, sorry, it's Paul. It's Paul, isn't it? Not Richard at all. So no wonder you gave me a blank look. I was thinking he's American. And I was thinking that you might... But anyway, you might have met him. No, because, Anyway, get back on the point, Andrew. So this fella, I'm just going to talk for a minute about him, Paul. And he was a guy who grew up in India, and he was the son of missionaries. And he grew up in this little village where his parents were trying to bring the news about Jesus to the people in India. And so he grew up watching all this going on. And he's one of these people who had a brilliant mind, very clever guy. And so as he grows up, he goes back to the States and he goes off to college and, he studied maths and physics and then got a degree in anthropology and, just one of these people who's a deep thinker and has a brilliant mind. And as he reflected back on his early life, what was going on in India, he thought, this is not right, what happened, because I suppose his parents and the other missionaries weren't just presenting Jesus, they were presenting this kind of Western view of Jesus. So if you, effectively what they were saying was, if you want to follow Jesus, not only do you follow Jesus, but you have to become a Westerner and dress like us and not go to the things that you were doing before, the religious festivals and all that kind of thing. So, and the Indians would have found that repulsive, give up all our heritage to follow Jesus. And you can see how there's a resistance there. So he thought a lot about this, and he was wondering how could we, as Christians, present Jesus authentically. So he was, like I said, a very clever guy. He did quite a bit with maths and physics. And you're going to have to bear with me a little bit here. I hope it's not too, whatever. Anyway, what he talked about was a bounded set and a centered set. So if you think about maths, if you go 5 add 3 is 8, well, is 5 actually 5, or is it 5.5 and you've or is it 4.5 and you rounded it up to 5? Do you see what I mean? There's kind of you need to define things clearly. And so just thinking about a bounded set. So we had a family reunion this Christmas, as probably many of you did. And 2 Fairhurst families got together and we met up halfway between the 2 houses. And so that is a set of people who were all Fairhursts. We were bounded by that attribute of being Fairhurst. Not that there was anything wrong with the other people who were there, but the family reunion, that we were Fairhurst. There was there's a boundary around it, a clear boundary. And as this fellow Paul was reflecting on this, he realised that this is a really interesting way of defining what he saw in India. And often, church communities can be like that. So there's a boundary line around the people in the set. So you know who's in and who's out. And some of you have grown up in churches like that. You were in if you behaved in a certain way, if you went to church twice on a Sunday and, all that kind of thing. You were out if you went to the cinema. So some of you are nodding. I heard this one thing. Like on Tuesday night, there was alcohol consumed. No problem. Not to excess. It was just nice to have a drink together. I got people a glass of wine when they arrived. So that's fine. But in some churches in the States, that would not be, you would be outside the line. I think there's a phrase, don't drink, smoke or chew, or hang with people who do. Yeah. Anyway, that's the boundary line in some churches, chewing tobacco. So it's a strong model because you know whether you're in or out. But the problem is Jesus. If you look at the story that we were talking about before, Jesus doesn't work with that model. He works more with the centered set model. So if you just, there you go. So let me give you an example here. A little bit of participation. If you play an instrument or have played an instrument at any point in your life, just stick your hand up. So it's quite a few people, isn't it? Right. Now keep your hand up if you would say that you are a musician. 1, 2, one at the back. I'd say you're a musician. So do you see, that's interesting, isn't it? Is it interesting? You did play, but you wouldn't define yourself as a musician. No, because how do you define yourself as a musician? Somebody who makes money out of it, maybe. Somebody who used to make money out of it. So you can see it's sort of complex. And then if you put that on the, you look at the church through that kind of view, who is part of the church? And what I suggest is that the people who are part of the church are the people who are moving towards Jesus. And so there's the next slide. That's it. So people moving towards Jesus are part of the community, not necessarily in the bounded set. So you could be, in theory, close to Jesus. You could have been, born into a Christian family, brought up in church, all that kind of thing. But you don't really think about God. You don't really practice it. If you look at your life, if you look at your bank statement, it doesn't really show that you're following God. Or you could be somebody who didn't grow up in church, somebody who's right on the edge of things, and yet you're on a journey towards Jesus. And I lost my point. So you can see how it's sort of messy, and you need God actually to be able to manage something like that. And that's what I'd like us to be as a community, to be a community that are on a journey towards Jesus. We're all on a journey towards Jesus. So it's not just people who look right or speak right or act right. The point is to move towards Jesus. And so this has always been something in the DNA of the Vineyard. This has always been something we wanted to be as the Vineyard. That was the dream when it was started, that we would be people who worked and move towards Jesus. And so some of the things we do reflect that. So you can kind of see this journey taking place in some of the things we do on a Sunday. So when we worship, the idea is to come toward Jesus. We start with praise and thanksgiving and move on a journey towards Jesus. And some of the other things that we do in the way that we do things, we don't have a list of members. It's just people who look like members, who are members. So if you show up, you give your time, your energy, and your money, you are acting like a member. You're on a journey towards Jesus. Or even with a small group, some of the midweek small groups, the idea is that we have a kind of fringe, people who are sort of connected to that group, and other people who are a bit closer in, who are part of the group, and then there's a core team, and then there's leaders. And so this is something that we're kind of working towards as a church. Having somebody described it as a pipeline, able to move towards Jesus regardless of where you are. It might be helpful to think of it as swimming baths. So here's a picture of swimming baths on a busy day. And you can see there are all sorts of different people there. There's some people who are in the water having a great time. They're splashing around, just really enjoying things. And then there are other people who are just getting in, and other people who are like just dipping their toe in the water. There are other people who are up to about here with the water. That point where you're getting in, and then it's when it goes above your swimming costume. That's the critical. Anyway, that's the moment, isn't it? So do you see how and there are other people who are just very happy to sit on the sides and watch what's going on. And that is I find that a really helpful idea of what we're supposed to be as a community. People at all different points, but nonetheless moving forward towards Jesus. So that's part of our plan with the strengthening our nets is to have more events that are kind of fringe events where people can come and there's not specifically any Christian content, like we did on Tuesday night with the Hideaway, and we can just get together, have fun, and be friends together. And even at that event, there are people there who are on the edges, maybe further away, but who are moving towards Jesus. And so we've got a few events coming up. The Valentine's Day party, it'll be great. It's not just for couples. You can bring anybody you want with you. I think we were asking for 20 quid, but like a tenner a head. But if that's a problem, no, it's no problem. And that'll be really fun. The guys who put the event together on Tuesday, it was a lot of fun. We had a great time. There was games and all sorts of different things. So don't think of this as the Valentine's thing as just for couples. This is for everybody. And come along, just be part of it. And even if you can't bring anybody and all you want to do is sit there on the edge of the swimming pool, that helps. Because there's nothing less inviting than an empty room. So just being here helps. And then there's another Hideaway coming up in, is it the following month? I can't remember. April. 14th of April, thank you. Which will be school assembly bangers. So, those songs that you had to sing when you were a kid and you haven't sung since you were a kid. Give me oil in my lamp, and what else is there? One More Step Along That's the first song I ever played in public on the piano. One more step along the road I go. And, and that kind of thing. So it'd be great fun. We'll just come and have fun together. There'll be nice food. It'll be set out nicely. And there won't be any Christian religious content at all. So, some fringe events for people who are further out. And then the idea is to kind of work on other events, maybe an Alpha course or a Bible course, for people who are a little bit further down the line. And so the idea is to do things for people who are all different points along the journey and give chance for people to move forward wherever they are. And so we're going to do some things on Sundays to kind of reflect that as well. Next week we're going to start a series on the Psalms. But as part of that, we're going to do a thing called Lectio Divina, which is a spiritual exercise. And the idea is to help you grow in your faith, help you grow in your connection with Jesus. And so that's the idea, to have a pipeline of things that no matter where you are in relation to how far you are from Jesus, that you have the chance to grow and move closer to him. So just one last thought. I grew up in a village. It was very nice, and this is the village church. As you can see, it's a very old building. I think 1400s or something like that. So, we're really going back a long way. And on the inside, it looks like this. This is the other end of the scale to the Vineyard. But it's still a lot of happy memories for me. Now, does anybody know what that part of the building is called? Chancel? The nave. That was the word. I think it is called the chancel, but the nave is the word I was looking for. And if you look at the ceiling, so does that remind you of anything? Yes. Viking what? Or a boat. Okay. Noah's Ark. Thank you. Oh, we're all on the right track. Now, the nave sounds a bit like navy, doesn't it? And navy comes from navis, Latin for ship. So the idea when these guys built this place was that it would look a bit like a boat. And so we're all in the boat together, all going on the same journey together. And interesting that you said Vikings, because this building is so old that some of the beams apparently come from a Viking vessel that was captured. I don't know. The Goosner, where I grew up, is a long way from any water, so I don't know what it was doing there. But you can kind of... And I don't know how they found out. Apparently it's something to do with the salt in the beams. And how... This is Goosner, where... It's just north of Preston. Goosner. It's where I grew up. Just north of Preston. Yeah. So it's a long way from the River Ribble and quite away from the sea. So in the northwest of England it is. So some Viking beams are in this roof. Now, I don't know how they found out. They obviously did some tests. Maybe somebody went around licking them. I don't know. Because it would have had the salt in them. So anyway, being in the boat together on a journey toward Jesus.